Welcome everyone to part 4 of this Blender tutorial series where we're creating this Star Destroyer bridge. So in this part we're going to do the lighting and the UV unwrapping, and we're going to be adding the materials and the textures. And speaking of materials, I did want to let you know about my Blender procedural material packs. So if you like using procedural materials, then definitely check out these procedural material packs. So I create packs of 10 realistic procedural materials created with Blender's procedural nodes. And also, if you'd like to learn how to create all of the procedural materials yourself, then I also have a playlist on my YouTube channel where I show you how to create all of my procedural materials. And again, I did want to let you know that you can purchase the project files for this tutorial on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page, and that's also a great way to help support me and this YouTube channel. Now in this tutorial, I am going to be using a metal texture, and we're going to add the metal texture onto the walls. So the metal texture that I'm going to be using is this metal 038, and this is from ambientcg.com, so it's a free texture, and I'll have a link in the description if you'd like to download it. So I'm going to be downloading the 4K JPEG, so you can just click on that and then download it. Alright, so before we set up the materials, we're going to need to set up the lighting, because without any lighting we're not really able to see the materials very well. And then also I'm going to click right up here over on the render properties, and I am going to be using the Eevee render engine. Now I took the final result of this tutorial and I switched it over to cycles just to see what it would look like, and it looked almost exactly the same. It looks very, very similar. The lighting is just maybe slightly different, but really cycles and Eevee look very, very similar in this result, so you can use whichever one you want. So I'm going to be using Blender Eevee, but of course you could use cycles if you'd like to. And then also down here under Eevee settings, I'm going to turn on the screen space reflections and the ambient occlusion, and then I'm also going to turn on the bloom as well. And these will make Eevee look more realistic. And then I have motion blur on. I just have that turned on default so that if I do an animation, it uses motion blur, but if you're not doing an animation, it's not really going to affect the final render. Alright, so now I'm going to click right over here on the world properties, and on the color here, I'm just going to turn this all the way to black so it's very dark. And then also I'm going to click right back over here on the render properties, and I'm going to open up this color management. And then what I want to do on this look right here is I want to change this to very high contrast. This is going to make the colors pop out a little bit more, and it's going to make the image look more contrasty, and it just really helps with the color correction. Now if I go into rendered mode by pressing Z and moving my mouse up, you can see that it's totally black because there are no lights. So we need to add some lights. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to go right down here to light, and I'm going to add the area light. I think the area light does look quite nice. I'm going to press G and Z, and we're just going to bring that up. And then I can click right over here on the object data properties, and this is going to go to the lamp settings. Now on the power here, I'm going to change this to about 130. I think that looks pretty good. We can now go into rendered mode, and you can see how that's looking. Now right down here, you can see it's really bright and it's kind of blown out, but once we add in textures, it won't look that blown out. It just looks really white right now because there isn't any material. So it's just using the default base material for all the objects, which is white. So it won't be that blown out once it has a material on it. So I'm just going to set it to 130. I think that looks pretty good. You could of course change this later. And then on the color here, I'm going to make this slightly blue just because I think the slight blue does look pretty cool. You could also make it just barely slightly purple kind of over here, or kind of going towards the pink. And I do think the blue looks really cool. It kind of makes the metal look blue, and it also makes it look more science fiction, like it's in space. And then I also want to press S to scale, and I want to scale this whole thing out quite a bit and make that square there quite a bit bigger because it is a little bit small. So I'm going to just scale that up so it's quite a bit bigger, and that way it kind of covers more areas. And then I'll bring it up, and I don't want it to be that far up. I want to bring it down. Basically, I want to bring it just a little bit underneath these beams right here. So something like that is pretty good. Now I also want to lighten up these two side parts over here because they aren't very bright. So I'm going to, again, select this right here, select this light, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate it. And then I'm going to press S to scale and scale it down quite a bit. And I'll just kind of move it up here. And then I want to change the power to something like 60 so it's much less strong. And then I will also rotate it on the x-axis and just kind of rotate it over so it's going a little bit more pointed forwards. And then I can just kind of bring it over here, maybe rotate it slightly away from that wall because it is a little bit bright. But again, once we add materials, it won't be quite that bright. It'll be much more dim. And then I'm also going to press Shift D to duplicate and bring it over on the x-axis, and I can double tap the R key to do the trackball rotation, and I just want to rotate this over, something like that. Let's go into the camera view and see how that's looking. Now I'm going to select one of these lights, and I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it. Let's go back into solid view, and I want to bring this light over here, kind of where the camera is, and then I'll also rotate it and kind of point it into the scene. So if I press 7 on the numpad for top view, I can press Z and move my mouse over to go into wireframe, and I just want to kind of rotate it like this so it's kind of pointed towards the scene. And then on the power here, I'm going to turn this up quite a bit to like 350, and let's go into rendered mode and see how that's looking. So if I press H to hide it, you can see it's all dark, and then if I press Alt H to unhide that, you can see basically that light is just kind of lighting up this kind of part over here. Let's press 7 on the numpad for top view, Z, and go into wireframe. And I don't want this to be popping through there, so I'm going to rotate it, move it over a little bit, and then I want to press Shift D and bring it over on the x-axis, and then I can go to top view again, and I want to rotate this so it's pointed over there. So we basically just have these two lights, and they're pointed into the center of the scene, and then that way it just kind of lights up this area over here and these beams right there. And then right up here, it's a little bit dark as well, so I'm going to select this first light, the first light that we added. Let's go back into solid view so I can see it a little bit better. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate, and I want to bring it over on the y-axis, and I'm just going to bring it kind of more over here. Let's go into rendered mode, just like that. Maybe scale it down a little bit, and then I want to turn the power down so it's not quite that bright. And then I also want to press Shift D and duplicate this light and bring it down, and then I want to rotate it on the x-axis by 180 degrees. So I'm going to type in 180 and then enter, and that way now this light is pointed up, and that way it can light up the ceiling. And then it is too strong right now, so I'm going to turn it down to maybe just like a 30 or maybe just like a 25, so it's a bit darker, but you'll still be able to see that a little bit. And then also I'm going to kind of bring it over a little bit, and that way the ceiling right here is just lit up a little bit. And then I also want to duplicate this light and move it over and just light up this entire thing right here, because you can see there's kind of a big shadow back there. So I'll press Shift D to duplicate, bring it over on the y-axis, and then I can press R to rotate, and I want to rotate it on the x-axis and just kind of rotate it over so it's kind of facing that dark spot right there. Rotate that over, and then I can turn the power up quite a bit, maybe to like a 50, so it's a bit brighter, and it's just lighting up the ceiling right there. And then, of course, we can play around with these lights later. If they're too bright or not bright enough, we can play around with them later. I do think this is a little bit too bright, so I'm going to turn this down to maybe just like a 30, maybe a little bit brighter, a 40, something like that. Now, I also think it would look really cool if we added a little bit of lighting kind of outside, and that way there'll just be a little bit of light kind of right over here on the windows. So I'm going to select one of these lights. I think I'll just select the original one, or this one, that one's fine. And I'll press Shift D to duplicate it, and then I can rotate it. And I just want to rotate it kind of out here, so it's kind of out in space, and it's going to be pointing kind of at the windows, just like that. So if I go into rendered mode now, I just need to rotate this, and it's not very bright, so I'm going to turn the power up so it's a bit brighter. And then I want to go back to top view, and I want to scale this up and kind of move it a little bit farther away, something like that. Go back in here into the camera view, and then I want to turn the power up a little bit. I think I'll maybe turn this up to a 250 so it's a bit brighter. And now you can see it's just lighting up the windows a little bit, and I do like that. And I want to do the same thing for the other side. So I'll press 7 for top view, and I can press Shift D to duplicate and R to rotate, and just kind of stick it over there. Maybe even make it a little bit more at an angle, just like that, and that way it's just going to light up those windowsills a little bit. Alright, so that is looking pretty good for the lighting for now. So what I want to do now is I want to UV unwrap everything, because on most of these objects we're going to be adding that metal texture. So what I'm going to do is just select one of these objects, and then I will double tap the A key to select everything. I'm now going to press Tab to go into edit mode, and all of the objects that are mesh objects, it'll go into edit mode. So I can just double tap the A key, and you can see everything is selected, and we're in the multi-object editing. So I can now just UV unwrap everything. Now to UV unwrap everything, I'm just going to press U, and then I'm going to use the Smart UV Project. And the Smart UV Project works really well for kind of sci-fi hard surface objects like this that have sharp angles. So I don't do this for everything, but for an object like this where we're just adding like a little metal texture over everything, and there's a lot of sharp edges, the Smart UV Project works really great, and it can save us a lot of time. So I'm just going to click on OK, and that way we don't have to like add seams and and UV unwrap everything individually. It'll just all be UV unwrapped at once. So if I click right over here on the UV editing tab, you can see this is what it's done. So it's just kind of flattened everything out, kind of broken everything up. This is our UV map, and this is going to work totally fine for this metal material. So I'm now going to hop over to the shading tab, and then just make sure you go back into object mode. And then I can go into rendered mode just by pressing Z and moving my mouse up to go into rendered mode. So I have the 3D view right here, and then right over here I have Blender's shader nodes. So I'm going to just select the ground object, and we'll start by just adding the material to it. So I'm going to click on new right here to add a new material, and we can just call this metal. Now I'm going to be using the Node Wrangler add-on to add in all the textures. So if you don't have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, you can just click right up here on edit and then open up the preferences. And then right over here under the add-ons tab, you can start to type in Node over here on the search, and then just turn on this Node Wrangler add-on. So the add-on is built into Blender, and I'll show you how to use it in the video. So we can now just close the user preferences. Alright, so now that we have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled, I'm going to click on the principled BSDF, and then I'm going to click on Control-Shift-T. And then when I press Control-Shift-T, it's going to open up Blender's file browser, and I can just locate to the metal 038 folder. So just extract the zip file when you download the textures, and then you're going to go into the folder. Now you're probably going to see more textures, but I've just deleted the textures that I'm not going to need. So you're probably going to see like a preview and some other files, but what I want to do is I want to select the color, and then I'm going to hold down the control key, and I want to select the metalness, the normal, GL, and the roughness. So just select those 4 ones, and then right down here you're going to click on Principled Texture Setup. And you can see that Blender has automatically set up all the textures for us, and it's also added in the texture coordinate and mapping, and it's also added in these frames here to organize the nodes. And if you zoom in here, you can see that it's starting to look pretty cool. Now I definitely want to scale the UV mapping because you can see those kind of just look like big lumps, and they don't really look like metal. So you could tap into edit mode and go over to the UV editing tab and kind of scale the UV mapping, but instead I'm just going to use the mapping node to scale the texture. So right down here on the mapping node, there is a scale value. If I click and hold my mouse and drag down, and then drag back and forth, you can see that it's going to change all the values at the same time. So I want to scale it pretty small so that the metal texture is pretty small. So I'm going to scale it probably something like that. So you can see now the metal texture is really quite small. You can still see those details, but it is pretty small. So just something like that is pretty good. And then I actually don't really want to use the base color. So I'm going to select the base color, and I'm going to press X to delete it, and that'll get rid of the base color. So instead of using the base color, I am just going to use this color right here on the principled. So I'm going to click on the white color, and I'm just going to turn it to a dark gray color. All right, so that is looking pretty cool. And then also I do want to play around with the roughness because I don't really like how the roughness is. So I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to search for a color ramp node, and I'll just drop this color ramp node right in here between the roughness value. So we can now change these values, and it's going to change how rough the texture is. So I'm going to click on this black tab here, and I'm going to start to turn this value up. And you can see when you turn this value up to more light, it's going to get more and more rough. So I just want to turn it up a little bit so it's a little bit more rough. Just turn it up a bit to something like that. So now you can see that metal is a bit more rough, but if you zoom in here, you can still see all that detail in there. Now also this bump here, it's a little bit strong. You can see there's kind of like some cracks and things in there, and I don't really want that. So on this normal map right here, I'm going to turn this strength down to a number of 0.5, and that way the bump map is just going to be half as strong, so it'll be a bit more smooth, so you can still see all those details in there, but it's going to be a bit more smooth. All right, and that is looking really good. So I now want to take this metal material and I want to put it on all of the other objects. So I'm going to select this main object, the floor here, and then I'm going to double tap the A key just to make sure everything is selected, but then this object is the last one that's selected. So I can now press Control L, and I want to go right down here to link materials. So I'm going to click on that, and that way it's going to add that material to all of the other objects. And you can see that is starting to look very cool. And then also the base color right here, it's a little bit dark, so I'm going to just make it a little bit brighter so that you can see everything a little bit better, something like that. Now if you zoom in here, you can see that this object, the scale is kind of different from these objects down here. And so I can just scale the UV mapping of this object, and that way it's going to match the other objects. And then also I'm going to look around here and see if there's any other objects that are doing the same thing. And I think this object as well, the texture is a little bit too big, so I'm going to select that object as well, but everything else looks pretty good. So now that I've selected these two objects, you can just look around and select any objects that the scale might be a bit off. I'm going to go over here to the UV editing tab, and then I can just double tap the A key, and that's going to select all of those UV mappings. So I can now just go into rendered view, or you can go down into the material preview by pressing Z and moving your mouse down. And also, if you don't want to see the selection, you can scroll your mouse wheel right here, and then you can click on this button right here, and that's going to turn off the overlays. So now I can press S to scale, and I want to kind of scale this up a little bit. And actually I'm going to look down here, and I just want to scale it up so that this texture is about the same size as that texture. And that is pretty good. That's pretty much all I needed to do. So I can now just click on that button to turn it back on. And then I can click right back over here to the layout. I can go into the camera view and just go into rendered mode and see how that's looking. So that's looking pretty good, although I think I just want to scale it up a little bit more. So I'm going to go back over to the UV editing tab, and then I can scale it up a little bit more. Let's go back over to the layout and see how that's looking. Now, if you zoom right in here and look at this like metal lip object right here, you can see that it is very stretched. The texture is very stretched, and that is because we have the solidify modifier. So you can say here's the solidify modifier, so it's thickening it up, and so it's not actually having UVs right there. So what I need to do is click on this solidify, and I'm going to click on this button right here, and then click on apply. And that way it's going to apply the solidify, so this is actual geometry, and then I just need to tab into edit mode and press A to select this entire object, and then I can press U, and I'm just going to click on the Smart UV Project and click on OK, and then just tab back into object mode, see how that's looking. Now you can see that the scale is kind of messed up. You can see how big the cracks are right there, and then this is like way smaller. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and go over to the UV editing tab, and I want to press A to select everything, and let's also kind of zoom over here just so that we can compare it, and I want to actually scale everything down, so something like that. So now you can see those are about the same size. So that is looking much better. We can go back to the shading tab, and I can press Z and move my mouse up to go into rendered mode, and that is looking much better. All right, now I also want to create a dark metal material and then apply the dark metal material to some of these objects. And that way there's just going to be a little bit of difference in the colors. So I'm going to select this object, and then right over here on the shading tab, I'm going to click on this button right here, and that is going to duplicate the material but keep the same data. So I can now call this dark metal. So dark metal, just like that. And now we just need to change this to a darker metal. So I'm going to take the base color, and I'm just going to turn that down and make it quite a bit darker, just like that. And already you can see that's starting to look really cool. So this is a bit lighter, and then that is a bit darker, and I do think that looks very nice. So now I can just go around and I can add the darker metal to different parts of the objects. So I'm going to select this right here, and I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm also going to press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview because I can see it a little bit better. So I want to add the darker material to this little thing right here, so I'm going to press L with my mouse hovered over it, and then you could go right over here to the material slots right here. You could also do it right over here though. So if you click on the slots here, you can see there are all the material slots right here. So I'm going to click on the slot, and then I can click on this plus here to add a new material, and then in this slot 2, I'm going to click on this button, and I'm going to click on the dark metal. So now if you click right here, you can see there's the dark metal. It is really easy though just to do it right over here because you can see it a little bit better. So now we have the metal, and we also have the dark metal, and there's 2 materials within this object. So I can just click on the dark metal now, and then I can click on the assign button, and you can also do it right up here with the assign button. All right, so now that is the darker metal, and then also I want to click on this face, and then shift select this face, and shift select that face, and also right in here I need to shift select that face. So I want all of those to be the darker material as well. So I'm going to click on the dark metal and then click on assign to assign that. And now if we go into rendered mode, you can see that's adding a lot more detail to the final scene. And then I also want to select this object right down here, and I want to actually remove this. So I'm just going to remove that by hitting the minus, and then I want to add the dark metal. So I do want those little control things to be the dark metal. All right, so now let's select this main big control panel right here, and I am going to go back to the layout so we can see that a little bit better. And then I want to tab into edit mode so that I can see that. And then also this other stuff is kind of in the way, so I'm actually going to tab back into object mode, and I want to press Control I, and Control I will invert the selection, and then I can press H, and that will hide everything. So now I want to select this object and tab into edit mode, and I can press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview. So I now want to start adding the dark metals to some different parts here, and then I also want to add some red lights and some white lights. So I'm going to start by adding the dark material, so I'm just going to go right over here to the material properties, and I'm going to click on this button right here to add a new material in the slot, and then I'm going to click on this and let's add the dark metal. So I can now just select some different parts and add the dark metal to it. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and select right here to select that, and then I'm also going to hold down the Shift and Alt key, select that loop of faces, and Shift and Alt and select this one, and Shift Alt select that one, and I'll also Shift and select that one. All right, let's also go over here, and I'm going to Shift and Alt and select that loop of vertices. And then also, I think right over here, I'll Shift Alt select that loop of vertices. And then I'm also going to hover my mouse over some of these objects, and I'll press L, and that is going to select the linked vertices, and I'm going to add the dark metal to some of these objects. So I'll add it to that one, also maybe add it to that one, and also maybe right here, so I'll press L, and then also I think I'm going to just Shift and select these faces right here, and I'll add the dark metal to that as well. And then also right here on this one, I'm going to hold down the Shift and Alt key. We're going to Alt and select these, so hold down the Shift key, you just need to select all those. Also, I can kind of go over here and hold down the Shift and Alt key and Alt select that loop right in there, and then Shift and select that one. And then also hold down the Shift and Alt key and you can select that loop of vertices and that loop of vertices, and then just hold down the Shift key and select any more faces that you need to select. And then also I'll Shift select that and maybe these as well. All right, so now I have all those different pieces selected, and maybe I'll just select a few more. So I think I'll just press L to select that and maybe that one as well. All right, so we have all these pieces selected. So I'm going to now click on the dark metal, and then I can click on the assign button, and that's going to assign it. So if I go back into object mode, you can see now there's just some dark metal on a few different places here and there. So that was looking pretty good. I think although I think right over here on this piece right here, I want to Alt select that loop of vertices, actually that one. And then I also want to Shift select that one. And I can click on the dark metal and click on assign to assign that. So just take a look at it in object mode and see how it's looking. You can also go into the camera view. So just something like that. And you can see it's adding a lot more detail to the object. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode now, and we can add all of the lights. So we're going to add the red lights and the white lights. So I'm going to click on the plus right here to add a new material, and I'm going to click on this new button. I'm going to call this white. And then I want to click right down here on the principled, and I want to change this to an emission. That way it's going to be emitting light. And then on the emission strength, I want to set this to a value of 10. And on the color here, I want to make this fully bright. So now we can just select some different parts and assign the white color. So I'm going to press L, and I'm just going to start to select a bunch of these parts. So I'll press L to select that one and those as well. And also right here, let's also select some of these. Right there. Oops, Control Z that. And I also am going to add the red material pretty soon as well, but we'll first do the white material. So I'll do that one. Let's go over here. I think I want to select maybe one of these things. Maybe this is going to be like a monitor or something. And then I'm also going to press L and select these buttons right there, and also these buttons right there. All right. Maybe I'll select these two as well. And then also right in here, we could select these. So I'm going to Shift and select these, hold down the Shift key and select those faces. And then also right here, I'm going to press L with my mouse hovered over all those buttons and just select all of them and these ones as well. All right, and let's just pretty much select all the buttons, and then we can go back and add some of the buttons with the red material. And also we may have too many buttons, so if we have too many buttons and there's too many bright colors, then we can just go back and delete some of the buttons. If there's too many of them. All right, so I think that's pretty good, something like that. So I'm now going to click on the white material in the slot, and then I can click on assign. So if I go back into object mode, I can press 0 to go into the camera view, and we can just see how that's looking, and that is looking pretty cool. There isn't any lights, so I'm going to press Alt-H to unhide everything, and we can see how it is looking, and that is looking pretty cool. Now, I definitely think there are too many white lights. I think there are too many, and again, I am looking at reference images from the movie and just trying to figure out what looks the best. And yeah, I think there are too many lights. I don't really want that to be the white material. And there are just a bit too many over here, too many of these lines here. So I will get rid of some of these, but I still want to add the red material. So I'm going to select this object, and then I'm going to press Control I, and that is going to invert the selection. And then I can press H again to hide everything else. And then back in solid view, I can select this object, and I'm going to tab into edit mode, and we can just kind of zoom over here. So I can press Z and move my mouse down to go into wireframe, and I want to just start to select some of these buttons. So some of these buttons are going to be the red material. So I'm going to just select a few of them. Don't select all of them, just some of them, maybe just one or two here. So press L and L. I'm also going to shift and select just that one right there. And then also I think I'll select that face right there and maybe a button or two here and maybe a few buttons just right there. And then also right down here, maybe I'll make this button right here, maybe make that red. So I'll press L to select that. And also maybe in here, I'll select those and we'll add the red material to that. All right, so that's what I have selected, just a few buttons here and there. So I'm now going to click on this white material and I want to click on the plus here to add a new material. Then I want to click right here and I actually want to add the white material again. So now we have two white materials, but now I want to duplicate this and make it a separate material. So to duplicate it but keep the same data, I'm going to click on this right here and that's going to duplicate it. So we now have white 001. So I can double click on this and I can call this red. So now I'm going to, with all these selected, we still have all these selected, I'm going to click on the assign button and that is going to assign this red material. Now it doesn't look any different and that is because this is still white. So I'm going to take this color here and I'm going to make it a bright red color. So if I now tab back into object mode, I can just go over here and see how that's looking, go into render mode, and that is looking pretty cool. Now I still think there are a little bit too many of these lights. I just think there are too many. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and I'm just going to get rid of some of the lights and I'll just make them like the darker metal. So let's just take a look here, and I am looking at my reference images just to kind of see how many lights looks good. So I think there are too many right here. So I'm going to select this face and shift select this face, and I'm going to click on the dark metal and click on assign to assign that. All right, so now that is the dark metal, and then I think maybe there are too many of these lights right here. So I'm going to press L and L and assign the dark metal to that. And also I think maybe there could be some red lights right here. So I'm going to press L and L, maybe right there. And then I can click on the red material to select that. And then I can click on assign to assign the red material. And then also I think I want to delete some of these buttons. So maybe some of these buttons over here. So I can hover my mouse over those buttons and press L, and then I can press X to delete. And I want to delete the vertices. All right, let's take a look at this. I think maybe I want to delete this one, so I'll press L to select it and delete it. So I don't really want this one to be the white material because we already have this one over here. So I'm going to select this, shift select this. I can add the dark metal and then click on assign. All right, let's go back into the camera view in object mode and see how that's looking. So I think there are too many of these red ones. So what I'm going to do is just get rid of that red one there. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and let's just move over here. And I'm going to select this face and then shift select that face. I can click on the dark metal and then click on assign. Let's go back into the camera view in object mode and see how that's looking. All right, that was looking pretty good. Let's see, right over here, this has red and white, and I don't really want that. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm going to just hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices around the edges. And I can just click on the main metal material and then click on assign. That is looking much better, although I don't want there to be any light right there. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm just going to select this face right here. I'm going to click on the dark metal and assign that. So now that's just the darker metal. All right, now also because we are using the mirror modifier, it's mirroring the exact same thing over to the other side. So you can see like right there, that is the exact same as that right over there. And I don't really want that because that just doesn't look very realistic that it would be exactly mirrored over. So what I'm gonna do is actually apply the mirror modifier and then just change some of the things. So right over here on the modifier properties, I'm gonna click on the drop down on the mirror and I'm just gonna click on apply to apply it. So I can now tab in edit mode and you can see this is all geometry. So now I can just kind of change some of the things to make it look a bit different. So I'm going to press L and L just to select some of these pieces. I'll press G to grab, maybe move this right over here. And then I also want to press L to select this, and I can press X and delete it. And then I'm just going to change a few more things. So I'll kind of move some of the buttons around, maybe delete some buttons and add some different buttons. So I'm going to press L to select these, and I'll press G to grab, maybe move this over here. And then I can press L to select this one and I will delete it. All right. And then I can also maybe select some of these buttons. Maybe this one, and I'll press X and delete the vertices. All right, that is good. Maybe I'll select this by pressing L, and then I can maybe duplicate this a few times. Really, I'm just making the sci-fi details look a bit different because I don't want them to look exactly the same. And also these buttons, they look exactly the same as these ones over here. So I'm gonna press L just to select all of them, and I can press G to grab, and I'll maybe move this over and press G to grab and maybe stick this down here. And then I can press L just to select a few of them. Maybe I'll select those two and just delete that. So it looks a little bit different. Maybe I can also select this and delete that as well. Okay, we can go back into the camera view and back into object mode and see how that's looking. So that's looking better, although I still want to change a few different things. I can see that this red line is the exact same as this red line. And then also I think I want to change maybe this right here. So I'm going to tab into edit mode again, and I'm going to navigate right over here. I'm going to select this and then shift select this. And then I will go back over to the material properties. I'm just going to add the dark metal and click on assign. I think I'll also maybe select all these, maybe move them over, and then I can just delete that one. And then right in the center here, you can see this definitely looks mirrored. So I'm going to select this face right here, and we're going to add the metal and click on assign to make that a bit brighter. And then also I can select this face, I can press I to inset that, and then I can extrude that back down so it looks a little bit different. And I think I'll also select some of these. So I'll press L to select them, and then I can press G to grab, move that over. Let's also press 3 on the numpad to go to side view, and I can kind of rotate this down and over. Oh, let's press 3 again for side view. Just kind of rotate this down on the edge there, and that way we can kind of put it in the center. And then also I can select this one and I can delete it. All right, that's looking better. And then I think I also want to make this look a bit different. So I'm gonna shift select both of these. I can press I to inset, maybe scale that down, and then I think I'll scale it on the x-axis, and then I can extrude it back in a little bit. And then to make it look a little bit different, I think I'll get rid of this right here. So I'm gonna select that face and I'll press X, and we wanna delete faces. And then I can Alt and select that loop of vertices, and I can press X and delete faces. So then I can click right over here on the vertex select, and I'm just going to shift and select these two, and then I can press F just to fill that. So now it just looks a little bit different. And then something else you can also do is you can go to the top view and you can go into wireframe, and you can just like box select some of these vertices and just kind of move them, and that way they're just going to look a little bit different. So maybe bring that one a bit smaller. Maybe also just press L to select these, and maybe just bring those over. And you can change the size of some of these. So maybe I'll select these, bring them over like that. Really just do some things to make them look different. So if I go into rendered mode now, or go into solid view, you can see that definitely looks different now because those buttons like aren't over there, and that looks different as well. It just needs to look a little bit different, and it looks pretty convincing that we modeled the entire thing. All right, so I'm going to press Alt H, and that's going to unhide all the objects, and let's just go into rendered mode, and that is really starting to look super cool. All right, so that is going to be it for the front panel there, but I also need to add the red and white lights to these panels down here, and then I also want to add a few of those lights to these right here. So let's first do these ones right here. So I'm going to select this, press period on the numpad to zoom into it, and I can tab into edit mode. And then I'll press Z and move my mouse down to go into the material preview just so that we can see everything a little bit better. So I'm just going to start to press L, and again we just want to select a bunch of these things. So I'm just going to select them, not all of them, but most of them I am going to select. Oh, I need to press Control Z to undo that because I just want to select those little buttons there. And then some of these pieces, like that piece, I'll just leave it as the dark metal just to kind of look like a little control panel, or maybe just like a little metal plate or something. So I'm going to select those. Also, I'm going to select those ones right there, and these ones. And again, I'm only going to select the ones that you're going to see, because if I go into the camera view, you really can't see much more than that. So I'm not really going to spend the time selecting all of these other ones back here because you really just can't see them. I'll just select these ones right here. And then also we will need to apply the mirror modifier and kind of change this up a bit to make it look a little bit different. So I'm going to click on the plus right here to add a new material, and in the drop down I can click on the white material, and then I want to click on the assign button to assign that. So let's just see that in rendered mode. That is looking pretty cool, but I do want some of these to be the red material instead. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode, and let's just zoom in here to those, and I'm going to just select a few of them. So I'll just select some random ones here and there, maybe select those and this one, maybe just select a few different ones there, and maybe 3 of them there, and maybe also just a few over here. So I now want to click on the plus again, and I want to click on the drop down and add a new material into the slot, and I want to add the red one as well. And then I can click on the assign button, and then I'll just add some of these ones to that. And that is looking pretty cool, although I do actually want to delete some of these because I do feel like there's a little bit too many, and I feel like they might actually be slightly too big. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm just going to navigate right over here. And one thing that I want to do is I actually want to be able to see this because I think that's pretty cool. So I'm going to press L and L just to select those, and then I will delete them. And then I'm going to press L and just select all these, just pressing the L key, and then I'll press G and Z and just kind of bring this up because I do think that looks really cool. That little square right there of colors I think does look very cool. And then also I think maybe there's too many right here, so I'm going to press L to select that. We're going to delete that. And also maybe I'll select a few more, maybe delete those, and maybe delete this one as well. And then I also want to just make all of the lights a bit smaller because I think all the lights and all the buttons are a little bit too big. So an easy way to select all the lights is to just click on the red here and then click on the select, and it's going to select all the red materials. Then you can click on the white one and then again click on the select button, and now all of the red and white are selected. So if I scale this down, it's going to scale them all together, but I want to click right up here and I'm going to change this to individual origins. I'm now going to go into the camera view and I can just press S to scale, and you can see it's going to scale each of them individually. So I can just scale them down a little bit and then just place that right there. All right, so now those buttons are a little bit smaller and that does look pretty good. So now I want to apply the mirror modifier just like we did for this one, and then I can change this side. So I'm going to click right over here on the modifiers, and on the mirror modifier, I'm going to click on this button and then click on apply. So if I tab in edit mode, now this one over here is actual geometry. So I can now just select some of these, maybe bring them up, maybe move them over. We can also change the colors of the lights. I can change some of the colors. So maybe I'll select these, go over here to the material properties, and I can add the white material to them. Maybe these top ones here, I can add the red material. And then I also want to select all these, and I think I want to move this up so I can see it a little bit better. So I'll press G and then Z, kind of bring that up and maybe move it over a little bit. And then I think I will press L just to select some of these. Just press L to select some of these and I'll just delete them. And maybe just delete a few more. Let's go into the camera view and see how that's looking because I do want them to look different. So maybe I'll just press L to select some of these and I'll delete those. And then maybe this one, just move it down a little bit. Tab back into object mode and just see how that's looking. I really just want them to look a little bit different. All right, so that is pretty good. Although I do think there's a little bit too many lights here. So I'm going to press the L key just to select these and maybe scale them down just a little. And then I can also press G to grab and kind of move them out there. Now you can see that these lights are glowing a lot. And if you click right over here onto the render properties, the bloom is going to affect the glow. So that is what this bloom does. Now, if you open up the bloom settings, I do think they're a little bit too bright. They're kind of like blown out. So I'm actually going to change the intensity and just turn the intensity down a little bit. And then you could also turn the radius up or down if you wanted to. I'm just going to turn the intensity down though, so that they're still glowing, but they're not glowing quite that much. So maybe just make them glowing a little bit more because I do want them to be glowing, but I definitely don't want to overdo it. All right, so now we just need to add the different lights to this part right up here. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and let's go down into the material preview just so I can see that a little bit better. So I'm just going to select a few of these, and we don't want to select very many because I did find that it's quite easy to overdo it. And also looking at reference images like screenshots from the movie, there are lights on the ceiling, but there's not very many. There's just a few here and there. So I'm going to just select a few. So I'm going to press L and just select a few here and there. Really, you don't want to overdo it. Maybe I'll select that one and that one. And then also let's go into the camera view, just see how that is. Maybe select that one. Also, maybe select that one and maybe that one right there. So I'll just do that for now. So I'm going to click right over here on the material properties. And again, I want to add a new material into this slot. So I'm going to click on the plus right here. And then on the drop down, I can add the white material. And then I want to click on assign. So we can go back into rendered mode, see how that's looking. So I think that's pretty good, although I do think there are a little bit too many. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and I want to click on this white here, and then I can click on to select, and that is just going to select all of the ones that are white. Then I can press S to scale, and I just want to scale them down so they're a bit smaller. That is looking pretty good. So I just want to add a couple more that are red, just a few red ones here and there, but not very many. So we actually don't have very many of these square lights. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and I'm going to press L to select one of the lights, and I'll press Shift D to duplicate. And then I can click on this plus right here again to add a new material. I'm going to click on the drop down and I want to add the red material, and then just click on assign and that'll assign it. So now I can just kind of move these around and I'll press Shift D to duplicate, and I can just add a few of these lights here and there. And also maybe scale this one up on the y-axis and maybe bring it up. Maybe duplicate this and bring it over on the y-axis. and just bring it over, something like that. And it really just needs to look good in the camera view. So probably something like that. Let's go into rendering mode, see how that's looking. I think I'll just add maybe a couple more red lights kind of up there towards the front, but that is almost done. I don't want to overdo it because it is pretty easy to overdo. Let me just bring that down, maybe stick that up there, and then duplicate this one, scale it on the y-axis, just stick it right there, and maybe just add one more here in the corner. All right, there we go. So that is it. I'm really not going to add any more, just a few here and there because it is pretty easy to overdo. And then also on this object, we don't have any of the dark metal. We just have the regular metal. So I'm actually going to click on the plus here to add a new material. And I want to click on the drop down and add the dark metal. And then in edit mode, I just want to select some of these bigger pieces and make them the dark metal. So I'm just going to press L and just move my mouse around here and just press L and just select some of these pieces. I do want quite a lot of them to be the dark metal. So I'm just going to select a few of those, just like that. Maybe those two, a few more, maybe one up here. Can't really see those. And maybe this one as well. All right, so I just have those selected. So I'm now gonna click on the dark metal and then I can click on assign and that's gonna make some of these darker. So if I go into rendered mode now, you can see some of those pieces are a little bit darker. And I think I wanna do that for a few more things. So I'm gonna do that a little bit more. I do like that dark material. So I'm just gonna do that for a few more things. Let's assign that and see how that's looking. All right, and then just one last thing that I want to do before we finish up this part is I want to add the stars in the background. So I'm going to click on this this background right here, and I'm going to click right over here on the shading tab. And then I can just go into rendered mode because I want to see how that's looking. So right now we're using the metal material and I don't want that. So I'm going to click on this button right here to get rid of it. And then I can click on the new button to add a new material. And I can just call this like space. All right, so I don't want this to be a principled. So I'm going to click right here on the surface and I'm going to change this to an emission. And that way it's going to be emitting light. And then I don't want it to be a white color. I want to create a stars texture. So to create the stars texture, I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to add the Voronoi texture. So this is a procedural texture and I'm going to plug the distance up to the color right there. And then also I want to select this and I'm going to press Control T and that is going to add the texture coordinate and mapping nodes. And I want to plug the object up to the vector. So just plug the object up to the mapping and that's going to use the object coordinates. And then right over here on the Voronoi texture, I'm going to turn the scale up quite a bit and you can see that's starting to look like stars, but the colors aren't really correct. So I'm going to press Shift A and I'm going to search for a color ramp node. Let's just drop the color ramp node right here. And then I need to flip these two values. So I'm going to put the white one over here and then I can start to push this black tab towards the white tab and you can see now that is starting to look like stars. And then also on the strength here, I'm going to turn this up to like a 5 so it's a bit brighter and then I'll turn this black tab way down just like that. So now we have some really nice stars out there in the window. And then I think I will change the scale up quite a bit. So there's a bit more stars, maybe bring this out to make the stars a little bit bigger. So you can change this to change the size of the stars, but I do want the stars to be pretty small. I'll turn the scale up a bit more so there's a bit more stars. Let's go back to the layout here and just press Control S again to save. And this is going to wrap it up for part 4 of the tutorial series. So we're almost done with the completed artwork, but we still have one more part. So in part 5, we're going to be creating the Darth Vader character. So we're going to create the back of his helmet and we're going to be using a cloth simulation to create his cape, and then we'll stick Darth Vader right there looking out of the window. Then we're going to do some final lighting, and then we'll do the rendering, and then we'll do the compositing, and in Blender's Compositor we'll do some color correction and add a vignette just to make the final image look really nice. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you've been enjoying this so far, and I hope to see you in the last part of the tutorial series.